if you're buying a house, don't worry about that inspection. We don't have time for it. Okay. I really don't care what the market looks like. We literally don't have time for an inspection. Now that I've gotten your attention, if an agent ever tells you this, give them the bird. Tell them to kick rocks and go find you another one. So I have had one instance where it was my client that was subject to this advice. It was before I became a part of their life. And then I've had an instance where my client was involved in a transaction that the other side had this advice. So let me tell you real quick how badly that turns out. My client in particular, they own a condo. They bought it back in, I think it was like September of 2024. Okay, people, this sounds like we were a high COVID area where it was like, oh my God, everybody has to get in right now. We're talking 2024, okay? And they were buying a house or buying a condo cash. They had just sold their house in Savannah. And they were like, all right, look, we're not finding what we want in the area that we want it. Let's just take this cash, put it somewhere, get something to live in the area that we want to be. And then when we find the house that we want, we'll sell this and get our money back and, buy what we want. Well, this agent, I kid you not, told them, we don't have time for an inspection. There were no other offers on the property. And they were cash. So and they basically came in at almost asking price. So why? Why would you advise that? Okay, first off. Second off, we are now selling said condo. And guess what? The buyers did an inspection. And guess what? There's a foundation issue. It is on piers because it is on the water. And there are foundation issues. They had to drop $4,000 to fix these foundation issues that should have been caught and dealt with when they bought the property. But because they were told they didn't need an inspection and they didn't know any better. This was not something that they knew. They ended up having to come out of pocket $4,000 to fix this issue. And that's not right. It's not right. Get the inspection. Okay. Second situation, my client was buying a property. She's an investor, so she does a lot of her own inspecting, but she also brings an inspector in. Come to find out, this property we offered below value because there was clearly some water issues. And, they said they fixed them. They did not. There was a lot of tumultuous conversations there. However, we bring in our inspector. We find, A, B, C, and D, there are issues. And what ended up happening, this one was actually really sad. I felt really bad for them. But what ended up happening is they bought the property and their realtor told them not to worry about an inspection. And this property had these issues when they purchased. And when I tell you that it couldn't have gone any further south, but great for my client, it really couldn't have. Come to find out, after everything was said and done, inspector came in. We saw all the damage that was a problem. We offered them additional money, off. We were like, there's no way we're buying this house at this price. So we ended up, I want to say it was $60,000 maybe, or more. Maybe it wasn't quite 60. It was 55 below. And here's the bad thing. They owed so much on that house that they had to borrow and come to the table with $30,000 in cash. They basically they didn't pay my client, but that's kind of the thought process. They essentially paid my client to take this house off of their hands because now they didn't have to deal with it, but they had to come to the table as the buyers, as the sellers. They had to come to the table with $30,000. They had to borrow money. It was a whole thing that we had to figure out, and I hated it for them. But it was solely because they did not get an inspection, so they did not know the damage that they were taking on, and then they just thought they were going to get out of it. They knew there was major damage. They knew there was major water damage that they did not disclose that we called them out on, and that was where our initial price point came in. But at the same time, you can't just not tell people about it. So we had a lot of red flags with that one, but I will say my client is very happy with the purchase and, she's happy about it. But get the inspection, Okay, I know sometimes it's a little expensive up front. It's usually, I mean, depending on the size of the house. Like it can be, you know, anywhere from $300 to $500 or $600 depending. But it's worth it because not having inspections has caused two people that I'm directly dealing with to lose a lot of money. Now, my clients losing $4,000 is not as bad. And they probably would have needed to fix it if they did not sell, but they would have never known either. And you should not be walking into a transaction and purchasing something without knowing what is going on with it, because it will cause financial strife down the road if you're not careful. So, my name is Morgan with Morgan Roundtree Realty. I do the Georgia East Coast, all up and down it, and I promise to never tell you not to get an inspection, unless, and you know, if you choose not to, you will sign a waiver disclaiming that I presented the facts to you that a inspection was necessary and you chose to waive that, because I will not have you come back and tell me, well, why we didn't get an inspection, you should have known that. No, ma'am. I have a top tier inspector that is like this with me, okay? Questions, concerns, trying to understand, like he and I are best buddies and he will help me with everything and help my clients. But you're not going to come back to me and tell me, well, we didn't get an inspection, but you should have known to tell us. That's not how this works. I have a top tier guy that I provide to you to utilize that I know will give you everything you need. And if you choose not to use that, you will sign a waiver, because it is not going to fall back on me that you made a choice to save that little bit of money.